the problem that I have with TVs is the fact that they aren't on most of the time. So when you're not actively watching them, you're left with a massive, empty, black, reflective rectangle as the focal point of whatever room it is that you have it in. So from an interior design and architectural standpoint, it's no surprise that rooms with huge TVs on display probably aren't winning any prestigious design awards anytime soon. Now, I'm not an award-winning designer by any means, but I am an architect and I want my living room to look its best and for it to make me and others feel good when we're using it. And especially as someone who's passionate about living in small and optimized spaces, there are a few things that I can really think of that dominate and oppress a small room more than a huge black reflective rectangle. Behind the scenes, there's been something brewing that could potentially change the way that we think about TVs in our living rooms, and this is with the ultra short throw projector. What I have now as part of my living room setup is the world's first and only 4K HDR ultra short throw laser projector with Dolby Vision, which puts out a jaw-dropping 150-inch 4K HDR image, all from a device that takes up barely any more space than a record player or a games console. Now, full disclosure, I got given this for free, and as you can probably imagine, knowing how much I love projectors in my designs, I really wanted one. So you can make of this review whatever you will. But before I get into why I wanted one of these for so long, and why I'm even taking the time away from my typical content to make this kind of video, it's worth understanding why, for some of us, this is something seriously worth considering over a TV. You see, the main problems with LCD TVs are brightness, contrast, and reflections. And because most affordable TVs use a backlight, this causes a load of issues with blooming around bright objects and the darkness of blacks when trying to make the screen brighter, which is why some TVs can be almost unwatchable during the daytime. This is why we've recently seen a big push towards developing the more expensive OLED, QLED, and mini LED technologies, and the much more expensive micro LED TVs. But despite all of this, even if they are bright enough and they can avoid problems such as OLED burn-in, with all of these options, you're still left with a massive and potentially 50-kilogram device needing a home in your living space. For those of us who are already used to watching shows in a fairly dimly lit environment anyway, due to the limitations of TVs, projectors are starting to make a lot more sense, as they have the potential to be absolutely enormous at a much smaller cost per inch, and they've been making huge leaps behind the scenes with HDR capabilities too. And irrespective of this, even when it came to the older and more basic projector technology, they were still a great way to save space and watch large format content. However, it wouldn't be fair on TVs to continue without pointing out the fact that projectors do have their own set of problems too, as most aren't bright enough to work without almost complete darkness, and as they usually have to be placed above, behind, or to the side of you, you often need to duck or dodge out of the way of the projecting image and find a separate sound source to ensure that the sound is directed out from the image you're watching rather than from behind, above, or to the side of you. Now, the reason I'm excited is that ultra short throw projectors solve all of these problems, and this one that I have here is from the brains over at 4Movie, and I knew that if I'm even going to talk about these, I wanted to make sure that I can get my hands on arguably the best one there is, with this projector having won several awards, including one by CES for innovation, as well as being named the #1 ultra short throw projector for 2022 by Projector Central, beating out all of the other tough competition from the other big name tech companies that we're all so familiar with. When first taking this thing out of the box, you begin to realize why this device is really a minimalist designer's dream, as it only comes with a single power cable, with no clunky power brick, and a sleek, well thought out remote, which comparatively makes setup a dream when compared to TVs that are often the weight of a small human. Ultra short throw projectors solve the problems of positioning and sound by projecting the image upwards and the sound forwards, meaning that you can place it right up against a wall and have the integrated speakers facing you, which in this case is a full-on array of Dolby Atmos supported Bowers & Wilkins speakers that create cinema-like surround sound, all from this relatively inconspicuous looking box that's putting out a 4K HDR image. Setup using the remote is incredibly easy with intuitive keystone and focus controls, and by signing into the projector's certified Android 11 TV OS with your Google account, you can download all of the big apps like YouTube, Amazon Prime, and Disney+. As you're getting it all set up, you'll notice that like most projectors, you can adjust the screen size based on how far that you place it from the wall. And as you can see, this thing can go all the way up to 150 inches, which, to put that into perspective, is the size of 4 75-inch TVs, which is so ridiculously big that I don't actually have a wall that's big enough in my apartment to illustrate this. I'm not really quite sure why 4Movie chose the tiny apartment architect to showcase this device, as it's safe to say that I am definitely not maximizing its capabilities here, as for now, this thing is going to be living on my sideboard where I've settled with the smallest size of 80 inches. But this is more than enough for our small living room, and really this device is a renter's dream, as it's so portable and the screen size can be reduced to whatever you need it to be by configuring the keystoning. Just to put the quality of this projector into perspective, right now what you're seeing is the worst possible case scenario of how this thing could look, as it's on my uneven white painted apartment wall, displaying its very smallest possible size. But despite this, everyone that I've shown it to has been amazed by how stunning this image looks. The reason for this is most probably because this display has a 3000:1 contrast ratio with over 1.07 billion colors, which is why the image just looks so incredible. And it's capable of this because it's a laser projector, putting out 2800 ANSI lumens, which, to give you an idea of how bright that is, it's close to 10 times what my micro apartments projector had. And this translates to over 800 nits, which is more than what you get with a lot of TVs, meaning that you can actually use it with the lights on or during the day if you wanted to. Of course, one problem with projectors is that blacks will only be as black as your wall or screen is, but this is something that can be mitigated with ALR screens, which are expensive, but despite this, regardless of the screen you use, you don't have to worry about reflections, which is a problem that you'll almost always find with most TVs. And you simply will not be able to find a screen that can go this big at this price point. And even with our corner apartment's full height windows during the day, this image is still pretty clear, whereas most TVs are almost unwatchable in these conditions due to all of the glare and reflections that are around the room. You also may be happy to know that if you're into big screen gaming, this thing has MEMC as well as a low latency mode, so you can even hook it up to a gaming laptop or a next-gen console should you want to play immersive games at an absolutely ludicrous size, which may not be desirable for competitive first-person shooters, but it is more than enough for most casual gamers, and it makes this thing great for driving games or simply if you want to have friends over to play some split screen. But the thing I love almost the most about this projector is the sound, as these speakers are easily on par with a dedicated soundbar, and this is something that you're probably unlikely to be able to match when buying a TV, as you'll most likely have to factor in a soundbar into your budget too. However, of course, when considering the price, none of this comes cheap, with a near $3,000 price tag. But really, when you look at these specs, you'll be hard pressed to find a TV that matches up with a 150-inch 4K HDR display with Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos surround sound. But simply put, as a designer, the reason that I like it so much is because it just doesn't dominate our living area, as I can now get all of this in a totally inconspicuous and discreet package that's so small that I can easily move it from room to room, or I can even pack it in a suitcase and take it around the world with me, as comparatively, this thing is so light and versatile and easy to set up when compared with a TV. And if I even really wanted to, I could just store this thing out of sight in a cupboard and simply bring it out when I want to. Of course, this video wouldn't be complete with at least some criticisms, and if I'm honest, the only criticisms that I can really think of right now is that I wish this thing had a simple Bluetooth speaker mode with EQ settings, as the speakers on their own are just so good on this thing, and in my eyes this is just a massive missed opportunity, as it's essentially a really high quality soundbar. But anyway, let me know your thoughts down in the comments, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to check out my other videos displayed on screen and in the description below.